This article presentation is by Jessica Jones for ELP 548. Our research question is, how has white feminism further perpetuated sociocultural and socioeconomic inequalities in urban education? Let's examine. What is white feminism and what does it have to do with education? White feminism is the exclusion, purposeful or not, of women of color's experiences of oppression in the discussion and activism of feminism. White feminism is not intersectional. It caters only to white women and is separate from feminism, which benefits all people by promoting equitable opportunities for all regardless of gender, race, sexuality, religion, or socioeconomic status. In 2018, 58% of U.S. teachers were women and 88.3% were white, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And this is while an increasing number of students are people of color, and this discrepancy has formed a disconnect between students' sociocultural, emotional, and educational needs and what their teachers can give to them. Christopher Emdin wrote, "For white folks who teach in the hood and the rest of y'all too." This is a quote from the preface of this novel. While some may use these statistics to push for more minority teachers, I argue that there must also be a concerted effort to improve the teaching of white teachers who are already teaching in these schools, as well as those who aspire to teach there, to challenge the white folks' pedagogy that is being practiced by teachers of all ethnic and racial backgrounds. This is an excerpt from an article called "White Women, You Need to Talk About Racism" by Margaret Jacobson for Bitch Media. She writes, "White feminism, white women who believe themselves to be just and well-meaning, are also contributing to white supremacy. The white woman is coddled, is praised for speaking up for herself, and is given space to be a feminist. That space and that voice, however, is not inclusive to those who have different pigments." The image included here is from an anti-Trump rally immediately after he was elected president in November of 2016. Now we will examine two articles that explore the connections between race and education. These articles strive to analyze the relationship between white teachers, minority teachers, and their minority students. This article is titled "The Importance of Minority Teachers, Student Perceptions of Minority versus White Teachers." The focus of this article centers on the question of whether or not minority students have more favorable views of their minority teachers than their white teachers, and what factors may contribute to this. The research methods used by Chung and Halpin utilize the Measures of Effective Teaching Longitudinal Database, also known as MET. For this particular study, students were asked to report on individual teachers. There's a wealth of information on both teachers and students that allows researchers to control for credible variations in students' perceptions of their teachers. The research findings show that students of all races and ethnicities have more favorable views of minority teachers than white teachers. In general, minority students have more positive perceptions of their teachers than white students, regardless of the teacher's race, and female students generally have more positive perceptions of all teachers than their male peers. And what are the implications of these findings? It's been found that minority teachers have higher multicultural awareness, which translates to more culturally relevant pedagogies. Minority teachers also have more shared experiences with their minority students than white teachers do, and they can better relate to the navigating of racial stereotypes on academic abilities, etc. And there must be higher rates of recruitment and retention of minority teachers in urban districts, where there are the highest numbers of minority students that can benefit from them. How will this knowledge affect my teaching, you might wonder? I will remain mindful that as a white woman entering my teaching career in an urban district, I need to remain cognizant of my minority students' sociocultural needs as well as their academic needs. And rather than ignoring the experiences of minority students, as many white teachers have in the past, I will openly discuss these experiences with my students to help reframe the way that minority students view their own academic abilities as a way to reclaim their power in the larger socio-political systematic structure of the education system and society at large. Now let's examine the next article. Critical Race Feminism and the Complex Challenges of Educational Reform. Childers, McKee, and Heighton of 2015 offer critical race feminism as a means to move away from the one-size-fits-all school reform approach and a way to implement social justice-oriented change in schools. The authors do not tout CRF as a comprehensive approach to educational reform, as they recognize that there is no one method that will work for all times and all locations. Critical race feminism can be defined as a framework centered in the narratives, roles, and experiences of women of color in analyzing systems, societal structures, and institutions. CRF can provide an intersectional and gendered approach to school reforms by giving insight into voices and perspectives of those most marginalized in the discussion of school reform by focusing on gender, race, and class inequalities that contribute to problems in school. CRF is founded in a belief in the permanence of racism in our society, the social constructedness of race, and the reality of interest convergence, meaning that marginalized cultures have gotten ahead only when those from the dominant white culture also benefit. How does CRF relate to white feminism, you might wonder? The one-size-fits-all model of reform does not account for the experience or needs of minority students, only middle-class white students, and do not seek to positively influence social justice in the community through school reform. One-size-fits-all is a hallmark of white feminism. Essentially, CRF and white feminism are opposites. A crucial tenet of CRF is its attention to marginalized voices of Black and brown women, while white feminism actively ignores their voices. White feminism perpetuates the idea of a singular female experience, that of the white woman, while CRF disrupts that idea through an intersectional approach. CRF and educational reform. Number 1 says that CRF can be a catalyst for positive social justice change, empowerment of marginalized people, and an intersectional approach to school reform by looking at larger systematic structures of oppression that have complicated school reform efforts for those historically impoverished and discriminated against. CRF centers community, dialogue, collaboration, coalition building, and partnership in school reform efforts. And 3, CRF moves away from the deficit narrative ascribed to economically disadvantaged students and students of color by drawing on voices of women and girls of color to spread narratives of cultural wealth and resources. How will CRF affect my teaching? I will listen to students as a CRF lens encourages me to listen carefully to my students' discourses, experiences, and identities as a better way to serve their academic and emotional needs, so I can better help them to connect their classroom learning to their lived experiences. In this intersectional approach, I will consider the relations of race, gender, and class in my approach to lesson planning, instructional methods, and interactions with students in my teaching career, with the intent to further disrupt the white feminist notion that there is a singular story of female experience in schools and in society. And how do these two articles connect? Both articles are embedded in a notion that the Eurocentric traditional model of education and school reform have a negative impact on minority students. The increasing minority-centric U.S. student population, compared to the increasingly white U.S. teacher population, has caused lasting negative effects on the academic and emotional well-being of minority students, as the single story of the white experience ignores their own lived experiences, which is a distinctive quality of white feminism, especially as the majority of teachers are white women. The greater recruitment and retention of minority teachers, paired with a CRF lens to educational reform, would help to change the narrative from a single white story to an intersectional story that promotes the voices of women of color to improve societal civil rights. This is a list of references that have helped to compose this presentation.